"Let go of my mom," said the black boy, his small hands gripping the hem of the heavy coat that covered his mother's trembling frame, and the courtroom erupted in laughter, as if his words were a joke spoken in the wrong room. The judge banged his gavel, and the lawyers whispered among themselves, their faces a mixture of irritation and amusement, while the boy held his ground, refusing to release his mother's hand because he knew that letting go meant giving into something far worse than fear. The mother looked down at her son, her eyes shining with both pride and sorrow, because she had always taught him courage, and yet she had never imagined the day would come when that courage would be tested in front of an entire room of strangers who wore their power like armor. The bailiffs moved closer, their boots echoing on the marble floor, and the boy tightened his grip with every ounce of strength he could muster, his voice rising above the murmurs, and he said again, "Let go of my mom," and this time there was a strange silence, as if the room had forgotten how to breathe. The lawyers glanced at each other, and the judge leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing at the boy as if trying to calculate the odds of this child prevailing against the weight of the law and the weight of tradition, and yet something in the boy's unwavering gaze caused a flicker of uncertainty to cross even the most seasoned faces in the room. Outside the courtroom, a storm had begun to rain, striking the windows with a persistent rhythm that seemed to mirror the heartbeat of the boy, and inside the walls that had always been suffocating with authority, there was suddenly a crack of light, a pause in the usual predictability of judgment. The boy's mother whispered in his ear, "You are braver than I ever imagined," and the words were both a comfort and a warning, because the path they were on was dangerous and yet unavoidable, as the child straightened his back and met the gaze of the chief prosecutor with a fearless intensity that made the words he had already spoken seem like a promise rather than a plea. The crowd of spectators shifted uneasily, their laughter fading into whispers as if the air itself had changed its mood, and the boy felt every pair of eyes weighing him down, yet somehow he felt lighter because he knew that standing firm was the only way to protect the person who had given him everything. Suddenly a sound unlike any other echoed through the room, a vibration that seemed to come from nowhere yet everywhere, and the black boy looked up and saw a light flicker across the high ceiling, as if the universe itself had paused to witness the moment that had begun with a simple demand and had grown into something far beyond anyone's comprehension. The judge blinked rapidly, his gavel poised in mid-air as the room collectively held its breath, because the impossible was beginning to take shape, and no one dared speak first for fear of shattering what was unfolding before their eyes. The mother pulled her son closer, and the boy whispered, "Don't let go," and she nodded, though her hands trembled, because she understood that this was no ordinary confrontation. This was a moment that could rewrite the rules that had governed their lives for generations. Outside the courthouse, the storm raged harder, lightning splitting the sky and thunder rolling across the city like the drumbeat of some ancient prophecy, while inside the walls of justice the impossible continued to manifest in subtle ways that defied explanation, and yet felt entirely natural in the presence of the boy's unyielding courage. The black boy took a deep breath and let his voice fill the space once more. "Let go of my mom," and this time there was a resonance in the air, a tangible hum that made the walls themselves seem to lean closer to hear his words, because power was shifting, and it was shifting toward him in a way that no one in that room had ever anticipated. The prosecutor opened his mouth to speak, but the words faltered on his tongue because the room had become charged with something that transcended law and logic, and even the judge found himself momentarily paralyzed, caught between centuries of authority and the undeniable force of a child's unbreakable will. The spectators leaned forward on their benches, their eyes wide as the air seemed to ripple with energy, and the black boy held his ground, unwavering, every fiber of his being focused on protecting his mother, as if by sheer determination he could bend reality itself to his purpose. The mother looked around the room, amazed at the change he could feel in the atmosphere, and she whispered softly to herself, "This is beyond anything I have ever known," and the words were almost drowned out by the collective intake of breath from those who had gathered to witness what was becoming a moment of legend. The impossible continued to unfold. The shadows in the corners of the room stretched unnaturally, and the light from the chandelier above fractured into patterns that seemed to dance around the boy, as if acknowledging his defiance and rewarding his courage with a spectacle that no law or human authority could explain. The judge cleared his throat finally, the sound loud in the sudden quiet, and he asked the boy, "Do you understand the gravity of what you are demanding?" And the boy looked him straight in the eye and nodded, "I understand, sir, and I will not let go, because letting go is not an option for my family or for me." A hush fell over the courtroom as the gavel finally came down in a measured strike, but the echo was different this time, reverberating not with the weight of judgment, but with the acknowledgment of something extraordinary taking place in the very heart of justice itself. The black boy's mother held his hand tightly, and for the first time since the proceedings had begun, she felt the tide turning in their favor, not because the law had changed, but because the impossible had chosen to intervene in the smallest and bravest of hearts. Outside, the rain softened to a gentle patter, and the clouds began to part, revealing slivers of sunlight that streamed through the high windows, casting golden patterns on the marble floor, while inside the courtroom every person present felt the shift the universe had whispered its assent, and the impossible had become tangible through courage and love. The boy took another step forward, never releasing his mother's hand, and every eye in the room followed him in, or as if the simple act of holding on had summoned forces far beyond human understanding to protect and honor the strength of his conviction. The judge leaned back in his chair, slowly realizing that the legal arguments and procedural rules he had relied upon for decades were now secondary to something greater, something primal and undeniable that had been awakened by the pure-hearted insistence of a child who refused to let go of the person he loved most in the world. The mother's eyes glistened with tears as she whispered, "Thank you, my brave one," because she knew that whatever happened next it would be because of the boy's unwavering insistence and not because of anyone's authority in the room. The spectators murmured softly amongst themselves, their voices tinged with reverence, because the room had become a witness to a phenomenon that no one had expected: a child's love bending the course of events and altering reality in subtle yet profound ways. The chief prosecutor lowered his gaze, realizing that his arguments were futile against the tide of something far older and more powerful than the statutes he had memorized for years, and he nodded slowly, though no one could hear the thought that perhaps justice itself had been redefined in this room today. The boy's small frame radiated determination as he continued to stand firm, every movement deliberate, every glance resolute, as if he had tapped into a force that demanded recognition and respect from every living soul present. The impossible reached its peak when a beam of sunlight struck the boy directly, illuminating him like a beacon, and for the briefest moment the room seemed to vanish, leaving only the boy and his mother, and the unshakable bond that had called forth something extraordinary to protect them. The judge slowly raised his hand, signaling a pause in the proceedings, not because he had authority, but because even he sensed the presence of something beyond human comprehension, guiding the moment toward its inevitable outcome. The black boy whispered softly to his mother, "You are safe," and she nodded, leaning into him, her heart swelling with gratitude and wonder because she had seen firsthand how courage, love, and persistence could reshape the very fabric of possibility. The spectators leaned forward collectively, holding their breath, as the courtroom seemed to hum with a silent energy, a force that respected bravery above all else and honored the boy's insistence that no harm come to the person who had given him life and love. The judge finally spoke, his voice trembling slightly with, "Or it seems the universe has decided in your favor," and the words echoed across the room, resonating with every soul present, because the impossible had been achieved not through might or money, but through a child's fearless refusal to release the hand of the one he loved most. The black boy smiled faintly and whispered, "Thank you," as the room slowly returned to its ordinary dimensions, yet retained the memory of something miraculous that had occurred within its walls, a memory that would live in legend for generations to come. The mother hugged her son tightly, and for the first time in months she felt truly safe, not because of any ruling, but because she had witnessed the extraordinary power of courage and love manifest in the smallest of hands and the purest of hearts. The spectators rose slowly from their seats, applauding quietly, because they understood that they had been witnesses to an event that will be told and retold as the day the impossible became real in the simple act of holding on, refusing to let go, and loving without condition. The black boy and his mother walked out of the courtroom hand in hand, their steps light, because they knew that they had changed something fundamental, not just in their lives, but in the very understanding of what courage could achieve and how love could bend reality itself. The sunlight outside welcomed them like a benediction, and the city seemed to hold its breath, watching as the boy and his mother disappeared into the street, a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices and the bravest hearts could create miracles that no law or human power could ever undo. And as the doors closed behind them, the echoes of that impossible moment lingered in the courtroom, a silent testament to the day a black boy refused to let go of his mother and the world, the universe, and everyone who witnessed and understood that courage could indeed change everything.